Hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. On today's episode, we're going to be setting up a web server. I do hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it. Alright, hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. So the first thing we have to do when setting up a web server is install the operating system. So in this case, I've chosen Debian Linux for what I got going on. And I actually chose the mini.iso file. You kind of have to click a few links to find that, but if you don't want to use that, you can use Ubuntu Server as well. You can use you can use BSD as also. What we're doing here pretty much will apply once we get to the web server. So we're just going to hit install. And now I actually have this. I purposely put it with less memory to show you something so you're not confused if it happens. First thing we want to do though is select our location. So we're going to go ahead and select North America and United States, and the key map does depend on, one second here, on your keyboard here. So what we're going to do is choose American English, but if you're in a different part of the country, or in a different country rather, go ahead and select the one you need. American English is fine. And this will automatically set the IPs up for us. Now, without any other config, this can do a dual stack setup where it runs IPv4 and IPv6. But we will want to set a static one though. Okay, for the hostname part, we're going to go ahead and put TTech here. You don't want a fully qualified domain name here. This can be confusing, but the host name isn't the actual domain name. So we're going to go ahead. So this will be ttech dot and then whatever we want our domain to be. If we wanted it to be example.com, so ttech.example.com, there you go. Okay, United States here for the mirror is fine. Usually, you don't need to change the mirror website, so we'll go ahead and just leave it like that and hit enter. And if you need a proxy, enter the IP import there. I don't need one in this case. In most sites you'd be installing something like this and probably wouldn't either. So we're going to just continue, let it update the package system and everything. Okay, this is what I was saying. If you have more than 256 megs of RAM in there, you probably won't have to do this. But what we need to finish the installation, let's see here, is the part man-ext3. So highlight that and hit enter, the spacebar rather. And then you also want the SATA modules. And this depends. If you have something different like SCSI or, something different, choose that instead of what I chose. But anyway, tab down and hit continue. And it'll retrieve the components for us. It's just fast enough where I could pause the video, but then if I did, I'd have to do it right back. Come right back. Okay, this is the administrative password. You would manage the system and everything you can think of from here. So we want to pick a good password for the user. Just enter it twice to verify. And you don't want to just use the server as root. So we're going to just use ttech here. It doesn't really matter. Just use whatever you want there. Just confirm it there for the username for the account. You do want a separate password different from root. So if this account is compromised, it will not compromise the entire server. Okay. And here we're going to choose just central for now. And this is where, coming up, we'll choose the partitioning layout. So this is our disk here, and we're just going to hit enter. And you want to create a new empty partition table. And under free space, we're going to hit enter. Create a new partition. And in my case, I chose 4 gigs. But we're going to actually do 4.0 0 for this this partition. The reason is we'll have space left over, and you'll see why in a second. We want this to be primary. You can have up to 4 primary partitions on a hard drive. And if you want more, use logical. We want it at the beginning. And we want to use extension 4 as the file system. You can choose others if you wish. Under mount point, to show you something, if you want separate partitions for kernel and your bootloader and all of that, or a separate one for your home user's data, you can do that here, but those would be separate partitions. We're going to choose to have everything under 1, okay? That's why we're choosing that. Under bootable flag, hit enter. And then we're done setting up this partition. And with the leftover space here, we're going to create a new partition, accept the size. We want it to be primary, but instead of the extension 4, we want to use, this is swap area. This is if you run out of RAM, it stores the extra information here. Okay, so it should look like that when you're done. Finish that, finish the changes, verify them, and they're okay, so we want to write the changes to the disk. Okay, and I am going to pause the video here, but essentially it runs through, installs all the software, and I'll be back with you in 1 second. Okay, we're almost done here, and on to the next step. Okay, very close anyway. Okay, now it's got to unpack everything it got there. And once that's done, I'll be back with you. Okay, now we're almost on the part where we select and install the software. Now, I do want to make a note here. If you do this on real hardware, yours will probably not have odd characters. There is something with the console and VirtualBox happening here. So that is not going to probably happen on yours, okay? Or if you use VMware Player or something like that. Just wanted to add that so there wasn't any confusion. Nothing is wrong. It's just VirtualBox. Okay, you actually missed the configuration for the usage of packages. I said no. If you want that, you can reconfigure the package, but that's really off the scope of the web server, so it's not that big of a deal. Just say no if you don't want it. Okay, here I apologize, but follow the red cursor that's moving. We don't need any of the desktop environments or anything. We're going to go down to SSH server here and hit spacebar to uncheck that. It is unchecked. Again, the console is just a little messed up. Keep the standard system utilities checked. And we're fine to leave everything else as they are. So we're going to tab down to continue and hit enter. Okay, and then once that retrieves the files, we're almost done, other than installing the bootloader. Okay, now we're getting ready to install the bootloader, and I am so sorry. The bootloader will load the kernel when after the computer turns on. After a small delay here. Okay, so if this is the only operating system, it is okay to do this step and just install everything. It's not common to dual boot a server. So we're just going to say yes here. And you can enter the device manually if you have a reason to. Dev SDA is the disk we want though, so we're going to highlight that and hit enter. Alright, and after this step we are ready to go, and it should start to reboot. It will probably prompt you one more time. I do believe it does, but it's hard to see at the moment because of the issue. There, the installation is complete, so you can either go back if you messed up a step or something, or just hit continue. When you hit continue, it will start to reboot. So I'm going to reboot this here, and then we'll start with the basic server configuration of any server, and then we'll get into the Apache. So the Apache web server. So I'll see you there. Okay, so if the installation was successful, we see our login screen. So we actually want to start by logging in as root and give it the password from the installation. So the first thing I'd recommend is an apt-get update if it's Debian based. I believe with most Red Hats it's yum update, and the newer ones are DNF update. But anyway, what we want to do first is apt-get install sudo, and my preference is net-tools. The reason being I've used ifconfig for years, and I still prefer ifconfig and things like netstat. But yes, the newer way is an IP space adder or IP route and things like that. Okay, so the first thing is the IP address. We want to set a static IP because right now it's dynamic. So here on Debian, if you use Ubuntu, it's in Etsy Net Plan now. You want to do Etsy Network Interfaces. And under here, the EMP0S3 interface, change the end to say static. And under there, put address, and this is the IP address, 192.168.0.1. We're going to use a /24. All right. And under this, we want to put the default gateway for this server, 192.168.0.2 in my case. Just change that to fit your needs. Okay, we're going to hit escape and save the file for us. And we want to then do if down EMP0S3 or whatever your interface is, and then if up EMP0S3. Now to double check it, I'll give you the old ways. If config, the IP is set and the netmask is set. And then if we do netstat rn, there's the default gateway. Okay, and the new way is IP adder. And just check the interface and IP space route. And then there's our default via that link. Okay. Now, so sorry. What we should do here is do the, we want to do the sudo next. I apologize. So to do that, just vi etsy sudoers. And we just want to add our user from the installation. So we want to add tech. Okay, and then we can use from above here. Okay. Now, this is where you can get more, you can restrict the commands I could run. We're not going to deal with all of that because that in itself is its own video. So we're going to use WQ and then an exclamation point. Okay. From here, we can exit out of this login and do the rest as a normal user. So now we want to log in as our normal user. So if we do who am I, there we go. Okay, so now we want to install Apache. So we're going to do sudo apt-get install Apache 2. Then we want to type that password. Type the right password. All right, and this will install Apache for us. This doesn't cover things like PHP yet. You'd have to install that separate. But we're just dealing with a basic HTML website. Okay? Okay. Now, if you want to check that it's installed, do sudo dpkg-l. And then if you pipe it to grep, you can just search for Apache. And that'll verify the version installed, the architecture, and all of that. Just a little bonus for you. Okay. So now we're going to go through the basic config file location of where it is in Apache and how you would change and add to the website contents. Okay, so now we are back here. 1 second. Okay, there we go. What you want to do is go to Etsy Apache 2, And then this is your main directory for it. Sites available is configuration for the available configurations. So if you wanted to do virtual hosting, that means where you use the same Apache web server, but depending on the domain in the request, it could serve different files. This is why you have something like this, because this can scale, and you actually have to enable them. So you could, only one of these is enabled, not the SSL site, just the plain text one. We can look at this, and just remember, it's a symlink back to sites available. This basically says it listens on any interface on port 80, and the document root is important because this is where Apache gets the files from. So if I was doing multiple websites, I would have like var www like example.com or youtube.com, something like that, and then have a separate file for each website. And then this would say up here example.com port 80, etc. I'm sorry, down here, server name as well. You would change it for each one. Okay? So that's at least for each particular website. And under apache2.conf is more of your global configuration. This is like where your server root is. So you can change these things, but it's unlikely you would need to. I was going to show you one more. These are the user and group, and you don't want to change these most times. This is for security of the process. If someone breaks in to the Apache, they can only run things that are within the privileges of the user. Okay? You can change where your error log is, your log level, and then this is important as well. Right now, the permissions are for var www, and then this allows people to access, it allows Apache to access the files so it can serve them, okay? If it didn't have that, what Apache would do is just send a 403 forbidden. It wouldn't be able to access the file, and then you get a permission denied. But what I'm getting at is if you want to do hosting of multiple domains or something, change the location of the files, you'd have to make a new directory argument here for where those files are. Otherwise, it's not going to serve them because it won't be able to get them on the file system. Okay, kind of trying to really, bring it together here, but it's a lot to explain. So that's a base walkthrough. If you go to var www HTML, this is your main file, okay? This is the only file that Apache knows about by default. All right. So what we'll do now is if we do sudo ifconfig, we'll go to that IP and just show you that Apache is serving out the basic website. Okay, so this is that IP we set statically, and this is your page you will see. So what we'll do next is just change it and show you how it'll show you something different. Okay, so now we're going to go to the var www HTML. So we're back on the server, and we're going to sudo vi index HTML. And actually what we'll do instead, just to make things a little quicker, let's back the original up. Okay. Make sure to do that as root, though. So both files there. Okay. And what we'll do is just remove the original here. If I could remember that one there. Okay. Now that we've done that, we'll just make a quick HTML file. Like super quick. This is a test. Okay, and remember in HTML you want to go ahead and have start and end tags as well. You would use something like Hugo or something like that usually to create your website, but that's not usually what you do when you're setting up a web server. You're more concerned with getting it working to send these files. You wouldn't be the one designing these files. Okay, so if we save that, and then we'll go back over to the site there. Before we actually do that, we need to do sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. You can also do reload if you want to do that. And then if we go over here to the website again. Alright, so all I did was reload the page, and now we get this spectacular, this is a test, text. Alright, so that's how you change it, but you can see now you'd add more files and things like that, and then you'd be able to get more of a website. Okay, just so you know the basic idea and that you know the permissions you need for that, and the thing about the config file and directory and all of those things. Alright, so now we're back on the server. And two last things I want to talk about. We're going to talk about the security of it, so we're going to set up iptables rules that will secure this a little bit better. Okay, and then after that we'll talk about some monitoring, and that will be that. So we're going to go to, first of all, do run level to see what run level you're in. We're in 5. That's going to be important in a second. You want to go to etc initd. And we're going to make a new file called iptables. Alright. And we're going to use a number symbol, hashtag, whatever we want to call it, and an exclamation point after that. Bin bash. We're making a small shell script that will load the rules when we start up. You can do this many ways, but this is how I prefer. Okay, first thing is iptables, capital P, input, drop, iptables, capital P, forward, drop, and iptables, capital P, output, accept. These are the 3 chains, okay, in iptables. Inputs for packets for the machine. Forward is when they're being forwarded through, and output are ones that are made by the server. The default policy is what happens to a packet, though, if it doesn't match any rules. And after that, though, we want to go ahead and flush the potential existing rules with iptables -capital F. We also want to flush the nat table. Excuse me. And for our rules themselves, we're going to use iptables A to append, and then we want to say the chain, okay? And we're going to say anything on coming in, so the I on the LO, so loopback interface. We want to accept that traffic. The J is a target. We want to accept it, okay? We also want to append to the input chain a rule that looks for TCP traffic, and we want to tell it that the traffic should be going to port 80 to match it. And if it is, we want to accept the traffic as well. Okay? The last thing we want to do is a rule that is looking at state. So we want to use the state module for that, and some distros it's CT state now. And we want to look for related, comma, established. We want to accept packets that are related or established. Okay? So those 3 rules are really all we need. What we should do now to test this is change mod. We want to enable the executable bit for the owner of the file, root. And now, if we just do /, let's run iptables -l. There's nothing loaded, but if we do /iptables, whoops, you gotta make sure we spell this stuff right. So let's go back over there. There we go, that helps. iptables-l now, and there's our all of our rules. Now that is good, and we can still connect to the server. But the one thing is, you won't have these when you reboot. Okay, to make that happen, we need to go into etc rc5.d, at least on Debian distributions. Okay, and how these files start with an S is going to be important. We're going to do update-rc.d. I'm sorry, we actually got to make the symlink first. So we're going to use ln-s etc init-d iptables. Remember, that's the file we just made. And we want to create a link called s01 iptables. So if we do file on that, on the file, it's the file we just made. Now to make that execute it on boot, we want to do update rcd iptables defaults. Okay? So now, if we do iptables-l, they are there. What I'm going to quick do is reboot and show you that they start back up. They get reloaded. I'll see you in 1 second. Alright, we're booted up and logged back in. And if we do iptables-l, they are loaded back up. Now, if you want to see the amount of packets and everything, use a V and L. And that shows you the amount of packets that have matched the rules. Alright, so in the next section, we're just going to talk real quick about some monitoring. Okay, first thing before I forget, if you are having problems doing things like pinging by domain name, vi etc resolve-conf, and make sure you have the right name servers in there. And if that wasn't your name server, just dd it out and do name server and then put whatever you want, okay? But anyway, if you didn't have problems with that, you don't got to do that. It's already in there from DHCP. Okay, monitoring, basically the first thing I'd recommend is handling var log Apache 2 access. And, you know, basically if I was to open up, I don't know if it's picking this up or not. If I was to curl 192.168.0.1, here you see we got the file and you can see the access request. But that would be the basic to monitor requests coming to the server and all of that. Okay? The rest of it, I would say, df-h is really good, monitoring the disk space, making sure you have enough free disk space, just the basic things. And free-m. Okay? What you want to monitor is the available, cache, and the free. Okay? If those get very low, and a lot of it has been allocated to processes or anything, it will start to swap. And if it does that too much, it will slow down the performance of the server and even cause a crash. Lastly, is systemctl. You can do status Apache 2. You can see the status of the program, see if it's active running or if there's problems. Systemctl restart Apache 2 is important. And if you're doing anything else, you can do stop Apache 2. Start. And as well, if you don't want it to start up, disable Apache 2 and enable Apache 2. Okay? And if we're curious if that command actually starts it, status Apache 2. It's active and running. Alright. So that is basically everything you need to set up a web server in Linux. 90% of that applies to BSD. So, alright, so there you go. Hope you did enjoy this, and as always, it's Tyler with T-Tech. Thank you for viewing, and have a very nice day.